that right?
Correct.
Can you please explain the difference between the definitions of telework and remote work?
Yes, remote work is 100% from a different location and can include living entirely thousands of miles away. Telework is having the ability to work anywhere from 1 to 5 days a week at a remote location.
Okay. Can an agency force a federal employee to telework? Like similarly, can an agency force a federal employee to show up for work?
Yes, and we saw that happen during COVID-19. There was forced telework that happened, and they should have the ability to force an employee to show up to work. But when you have problematic components that are baked into the cake for the new administration that prevent, such as deputy commissioners at SSA, from having that authority because of a collective bargaining agreement, that's arguably counter to the law.
Do you feel it's within the purview of the President of the United States to set the work schedule for federal employees across the board?
I do, and in particular telework, that's what the Telework Act of 2010 requires.
Ms. Cross, do you agree with that assumption that the President of the United States has the broad authority to set work requirements for federal employees?
Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. If you love this country, believe in hard work, and are tired of the games being played by bureaucrats and union bosses in Washington, D.C., you're in the right place. Today, I want to react to a congressional hearing that honestly just proves everything we've been saying for years. The federal government is bloated, unaccountable, and way too cozy with the unions that are supposed to keep them in check. Let me break down exactly what happened and give you my thoughts. As a proud American who's fed up with our tax dollars being wasted on bureaucratic nonsense.
Well, you can't think about it now, Ms. Cross. We're here. We're on the fly. Do you think it's under the purview of the President to set work requirements for federal employees? Since essentially in our system of government, we have a unitary executive, and the President of the United States is the executive branch.
Sure.
Okay. Mr. O'Malley, do you agree with that assessment that the President of the United States has the unilateral authority for setting work requirements for federal employees?
No, under the law, he has the ability, but
Mr.
it's
O'Malley.
not unilaterally. He has to abide by the law. At least in a republic, you abide by the law.
Mr. O'Malley, do you believe that the President of the United States is the executive branch? Whether it's President Trump, President Biden, President Obama, President Bush, Herbert Walker Bush, President Reagan, do you believe that the President of the United States is the unitary executive and is the executive branch?
Yes, and he has to abide under the law. He has to obey the law.
So you mean to tell me that the President of the United States doesn't have the ability to set work requirements?
I'm saying that he does, but he has to do so under the terms and the rule of the law. And so, and contract law and things contained in agreements that are negotiated under the law are things that the president has to be mindful of and should be, and should be guided by.
When you signed this agreement with the unions over at the Social Security Administration, did you do it purposefully to undermine President Trump on his way in the door?
No, I did it to sustain the big customer service delivery improvements that this greatly depleted agency had made in the course of the year, and to try to staunch the attrition rate and the fact that so many are eligible for retirement. The reduction in staffing is really hurting a lot of seniors in every one of your districts, a lot of people with disability, a lot of our poorest people that are on SSI. I did what I did in order to better serve the American people.
But when you set this agreement, knowing that the presidential election had already been decided, did you call Mar-a-Lago and say, hey, what's your opinion on this?
No.
Did you ask President Biden to reach out to President Trump in a matter of transition and say, hey, which way do we want the next president to be able to administer the employees that are under his purview as the unitary executive?
I worked for President Biden. He appointed me, and I was confirmed in a lopsided bipartisan margin by the Senate, and I executed the duties that I was assigned at Social Security to better serve senior citizens, better serve people on SSI, and people with disabilities. That's what I did, Congressman.
My counter argument to you, Mr. O'Malley, is that whether it's whatever president we're talking about, they all have the same duty to serve the seniors who were promised something on Social Security, and that mission is going to be executed regardless of party, regardless of president. But, sir, what you did was to essentially do a workaround of the incoming administration. But I'm going to come back to you later. Ms. Gressler, I'm going to come back to you. You stated earlier in your testimony about we do have an issue with some of the federal employees who are doing work, union work, on federal government time. Can you expound upon that?
Yes, unfortunately, we don't have any more data on that because the Biden administration stopped collecting that. But if you use what the Obama administration, those figures, and convert them to today's salaries, taxpayers are paying over $300 million per year to pay federal employees to step away from the jobs they're hired for and to instead go do union work on taxpayers' dime.
Mr. Chairman, if you will oblige, what is some of do you have an idea of some of the work that's being done on federal government time for the unions that they're a part of?
That can include negotiations. It could include lobbying Congress. It can include helping employees to file grievances or unfair labor practices if they have their telework policies taken away from them.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that it's in the interest of this committee and, frankly, of the United States going forward that we find out exactly what work is being done while employees are being paid by the federal government that is not within the purview of the job that they were hired to perform. I yield back.
Absolutely.
So let's start with the basics. The hearing opened with a clarification, and I use that term loosely, on the difference between remote work and telework. According to these officials, remote work is when you're 100% away from the office, maybe even thousands of miles away. Telework is more like, hey, you can work from home up to 5 days a week, but you might need to show up sometimes. Now, I don't know about you, but to me, this is just bureaucratic word salad. The fact is, if you're not in the office, you're not in the office. And after years of watching these federal agencies operate, I have to ask, who's actually doing the work? Who's accountable? When you have people scattered all over the country, how do you make sure taxpayer dollars are being spent wisely? Here's where it gets interesting. The witnesses admitted, yes, the government can force a federal employee to telework, like we saw during COVID-19. They can also force people to show up for work. Well, I would hope so. If you have a job, you should show up for it. That's what the rest of America does every single day. But get this, some agencies like the Social Security Administration actually have their hands tied because of union contracts. Deputy commissioners at SSA can't even require people to come into the office because of these collective bargaining agreements. Let's call this what it is, a power grab by the unions, plain and simple. They're not interested in serving the American people. They're interested in protecting their own perks and making themselves indispensable. And you know who loses? The seniors, the disabled, the people who actually depend on these services. Now, Representative Byron Donalds, God bless him, asked the million-dollar question. Does the president have the authority to set work schedules for federal employees? Most of the witnesses agreed, but one tried to split hairs and say, well, the president can't act unilaterally. He has to respect the law and union contracts. Folks, this is the problem. We have a unitary executive in this country. The president is the boss of the executive branch. If the president says, get back to the office, then get back to the office. The law doesn't exist to protect bureaucrats from accountability. It exists to make sure the government works for us, the people. But these union deals, often signed at the last minute, right before an administration leaves, are designed to tie the hands of the next president. It's a deep state move, and it undermines democracy. I don't care if it's Trump, Biden, or anybody else. The president should be able to run the executive branch without being sabotaged by unelected bureaucrats and their union handlers. Here's the part that should make every taxpayer furious. One witness, Ms. Gessler, said that over $300 million of your money is spent every year paying federal employees to do union work. Not the job they were hired for, not serving the American people, but negotiating contracts, lobbying Congress, and filing grievances. Let me repeat that. You're paying government workers to do union work, not government work. That's outrageous. And guess what? The Biden administration stopped collecting data on this. Why? Because they don't want you to know the truth. They don't want you to know how much is being wasted. Imagine if you worked for a private company and spent half your day working for the union instead of your employer. You'd be out the door in a heartbeat. But in Washington, it's just business as usual. Listen, folks, this is why Americans are losing faith in their government. We see the waste, the lack of accountability, and the political games. We see union bosses running the show, while the people who actually need help, seniors, the disabled, the poor, get left behind. This isn't about left or right, Republican or Democrat. It's about right and wrong. It's about making sure our government works for us, not for itself. The president, any president, should have the authority to set work requirements for federal employees. If you sign up to work for the government, you should be ready to serve the public, not your union. And Congress needs to get serious about ending taxpayer-funded union work. No more hiding behind contracts. No more last-minute deals to tie the hands of incoming administrations. If you agree with me, do me a favor. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, share this with your friends and family, and call your congressman. Demand they investigate union activity on government time. Demand transparency. Demand accountability. Because at the end of the day, the government works for U.S., not the other way around. That's it for today, Patriots. Stand tall, stay strong, and never stop fighting for this great country. God bless America.